Let me put a little bit of a lapse on that one too, just to kind of see. You can kind of see this one might be trending a little bit more east. You've got different movements of our storms this evening. You've got these storms in the Panhandle moving more to the east. You've got our storm coming on in from Kansas, moving down more from north to south. And the reason for that, we've got very weak winds aloft. And so pretty much however they've been moving will be then how they continue to move. So there's likely going to be some differences in the direction of some of these storms this evening. It's not like they're on a cold front that's moving on through and they're all moving in the same direction and the same speed. We might be looking at storms kind of moving in different directions that we'll be tracking. So we'll keep an eye out for how those will be playing into each other, because as you would imagine, if this storm keeps on moving southward and these storms are moving slowly eastward, there might be a time at some point by Fort Supply, Shattuck, Fargo, Woodward, maybe in this area where they combine and interact with each other. So we'll see what happens. But one thing we are quite certain about is, again, the number of storms that we're going to be talking about is not going to be very much. We're not going to be talking about a ton of storms going into this evening. As I just kind of move through my actual show itself, what you're going to see, though, is that while it may not be picking up on the storms right now, what you can see is that it does a good job pointing out northwest Oklahoma will be the spot to watch out for. But we don't have very much storm activity out there. So we're not talking about a ton of storms that are going to be moving on through this part of the state. And we're probably going to be dealing with these storms for really just the next really few hours going into this evening. The watch itself goes until midnight tonight. We'll see if it actually goes that long. But it is going to be likely just a couple of storms that we'll be tracking throughout the evening. So not a lot of activity. Just kind of zooming way out just to kind of get everyone's bearings straightened out. You can see that we do not have any storms nearby the metro, and in fact, it's quite likely that a lot of these storms won't make their way towards the metro. So it might be pretty dry here in the core area of our viewing area for this evening. Northern Oklahoma obviously is dealing with some storms right now, and these storms, while they probably are going to weaken as they move southward, will likely kind of still stay in that kind of western and northwestern part of the state. But I think a lot of us, though, will actually end up being dry for the overnight hours tonight. So not everyone will see the rain for this evening. And the next couple days, storms will likely favor more of this part of the state than anything else because of these nearby boundaries and the dry line that's pretty close by there, too. But let's go back to our storms that we do have. And so we'll switch on over to Vance Air Force Base radar and just kind of put a small animation through our storms. Very, very slow moving right now. That storm that's by Cherokee and Jet looks to continue on its more southeasterly track. We do have our supercell thunderstorm coming into Harper County, moving basically straight south. And then we have our storms that we have on the edge of your screen in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles. Those are moving more straight east. So kind of a different movements with our storms this evening. But that's how things are going to go, because the overall atmosphere up higher aloft just doesn't have a lot of strong winds up there. Now, as we zoom into our storm, we can still see that we have our tornado warning until 6:15. You can still see on our reflectivity that we do have our notch, so it's right there. So Willard, you're in the clear right now in terms of the tornado potential, but clearly, though, you are basically underneath the actual hail core itself. So you're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Again, the hail probably going to be more impactful for more of the state because this is a big supercell thunderstorm. The hail swath is going to be really large, and it's warned for up to baseball-sized hail, whereas a tornado potential would be a lot smaller in a much more localized area. So we do have to just kind of keep in mind that while Willard is likely safe from the tornado aspect, the storm itself definitely very impactful in terms of the hail potential that we have. But again, heading slowly south between Willard and the Roston area, and we've said it now a couple times, very rural part of the state. So nothing else is going to show up if I put a track on things. Taking a look at our velocity, again, you can kind of see it doesn't totally add up exactly with where this shows up. So there would be our area of rotation, and then here's where it looks like on our reflectivity. So it might be kind of right there on an outer circulation, might be where we have it right now. But again, nearby areas like Roston, need to make sure that we're taking our tornado precautions, heading down to our safe spot. Let's see, just a couple of things that we're going to check up on. Our Alfalfa County storm shows some weakening aloft, so that's our Cherokee Jet storm by Great Salt Plains. That one looks to be probably coming down a little bit in intensity, so that's good to see. So we will see if we get any more new warnings out of that one. In fact, we only have about 6 more minutes left, and it looks like NWS is going to let this warning expire, so that's good news. But we are still watching our storm within Harper County with that chance for a tornado. Again, it's very rural areas, so it's not going to show up with my track. But again, areas like Roston need to make sure that we're taking our tornado precautions. But areas like from Willard, like I said, you are still going to make sure that we are taking our precautions there too, because that hail core is really close to you. Maybe the hail core has come down just a touch, maybe just slightly there, but still it's a very large hail, up to baseball size, what the actual warning is for. So it's going to be really close to the Willard area. So make sure that we're, again, still staying away from our windows, down on the lowest level, even if you're not in the tornado warning, because of how large that hail is going to be. And we'll also likely be talking too about some really heavy rain that we're going to be seeing in this area too. This is a slow moving storm, only about 15 miles per hour. Again, that's the reason why my track didn't pick up on anything for the tornado warning. But again, we are looking at this to be a really slow moving storm, very, very heavy rain, huge hail, and that tornado potential all showing up there. Again, that would be where our area of rotation would be, still to the north of the Roston area. It's getting closer to you guys. So again, I'd still make sure that we're taking our precautions there. But we've got about 20 minutes left of our tornado warning, and you can see just how slowly it has moved. It has only moved through just a little bit of the county itself. So this potentially could be a long-lasting supercell if it keeps on going. We might be talking about this one for a while, but it's not going to be moving very much during its duration of its speed, or of its life cycle, because its speed is quite low. So that's a good thing, though. Obviously, for the tornado potential, you've got time to take your shelter. But unfortunately, though, that also does mean that we do have to contend with some dangerous large hail for a longer duration of time, as it just kind of sits over the same areas. And eventually, we'll probably be talking about some localized flooding too, because of how heavy the rain is underneath this storm. Because as we take a look at our reflectivity, it is very, very heavy that we do have there. So we've got winds now with this severe thunderstorm warning up to 70. So let me take a look at this. Okay, so we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that comes out way ahead of it now, because our destructive severe thunderstorm warning is going to come to an end in 3 minutes. So this one now does include Laverne, and you can see this one goes all the way out to 6:45. So we do have the chance there for up to 70-mile-per-hour winds and up to 2-inch in diameter hail. So we are still going to be watching out for that tornado potential. The hail size may have come down slightly as we take a look at our core, hail core right there, west of the Willard area. It's to 2 inches, whereas if we were to go back a little bit in time, you can see that, and again, this is going to be an estimate that we had, but you had that little area of the white showing up there. That would be for even larger hail. So it might be coming down just slowly in intensity. Clearly, though, a very dangerous storm, but it's likely the hail has come down just a little bit in size. So up to 2-inch in diameter hail still remains possible with this storm, and that, like I said, goes until 6:45 this evening. So again, here is where everything is currently at. Again, the storm remains currently all within Harper County itself, and we also have our tornado warning that still remains for another about 17 minutes. So you can still see that with our reflectivity. There's a little bit of a notch that still does show up there quite nicely. But you've got with our area of velocity, looks to be a little bit more ragged, but it's possibly cycling. We've been seeing this storm surviving now for a number of hours within Kansas and now coming out into Oklahoma. So it's got the potential for being a long track. So it's potentially cycling through right now. You can still see on the reflectivity the notch is there, so it does back up that that circulation and the rotation is definitely there. But it now does include a larger area kind of south of there, as we're kind of expecting the storm to be moving more south. So they were able to kind of take out some of its kind of eastern edge out of at least this initial polygon. We'll see if Selman ends up being included in an additional warning going forward. But right now, Buffalo is within the severe thunderstorm warning for it. The same can also be said for Laverne. And like I said, probably cycling. There we go. We just got our confirmed tornado report with that. So like I said, it's been going in and out of intensity. Now to take a look at our velocity. You know, it's not probably caught up with the latest scan there, but we do have obviously a confirmation of a tornado warning and that will continue until 6:15. So we've got this as confirmed. So this now does include the Roston area. As we've been kind of talking about, it's kind of southern, or it's tracked south, still really slowly, about 15 miles per hour. It's not going to show Roston from that actual area of circulation, but still in the Roston area, you need to make sure that we're taking our precautions as you are really close to there now. It might be passing just between you and Buffalo, but still in the Roston area, you need to make sure that we're taking our precautions and getting down to our shelter and away from the windows, as it again remains a storm that can produce not only the tornado potential, but also very, very large hail. It's still moving south about 15 miles per hour, so that estimate of around 15 miles per hour continues to make sense. So again, from our velocity, yeah, that would be right in there. That would be where we'd have our area of rotation right there. Taking a look at reflectivity, yeah, kind of backs up that same zone. So we are still watching this area very closely. Confirms tornado right now with this heading south really slowly at around 15 miles per hour. So in the Roston area, you've got some time. Don't panic, but I would definitely act quickly as it is confirmed right now. And the storm is very, very large and very powerful, maybe on a downward trend in terms of its hail size, but we've not had this be confirmed tornado warned until right now. So we still need to make sure that we're taking this storm really seriously. Again, in the Roston area and locations to the north and to the east of there, basically between Roston and Buffalo, we need to make sure that we're taking our precautions. And even if you are not within the tornado warning area itself, we still have to just be mindful of the fact that this has really large hail. And not only is the hail large, up to 2 inches in diameter, we also have a very large hail core just in general itself. So just a very large area that we'll be seeing very, very large hail and heavy rain too. But you can see that this definitely is going to be encompassing a lot of Harper County would be dealing with the potential for some large hail. So everything's at play here. The chance for some flooding is also there. Large hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds, as well as our tornado potential. And again, this is in the far northwest part of the state. The metro area likely is going to remain clear out of this, as it's likely will be maintaining kind of its slow southern track. As we just kind of zoom out, you will see with our laps that over the past 15 minutes, it continues to move extremely slowly. So we don't have very much of a forward motion with this storm. So sometimes when that does happen, it potentially could become more outflow dominant. And when that does happen, then the storms kind of blow themselves out. So that has not happened yet, but that typically is more likely in a slower moving storm than faster moving storms. We also have to still kind of watch out for these little cells that are within the panhandle as well, as some of those potentially could eventually impact and create some more interaction with our supercell. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Our models have not been very good with the placement of our storms and the timing of our storms. It's actually been a little bit too late with the actual initiation of our storms, so they're not going to be of use right now, but we'll definitely keep an eye out how these cells will interact eventually down the line, because these are going to be on a collision course as they make their way closer to each other, and that might happen, you know, let's say by the Fort Supply area north of Shattuck, somewhere there south of Laverne. This zone might be an area where we have that potential interaction down the line, but it's going to take a while. Everything is moving really slowly out there this evening, with most movement being only at around 15 miles per hour or so. As you can see, our storm that was within Alfalfa County, that one has now been allowed to expire, so that's now gone, and it actually looks to be a lot weaker now too, even though it does have a little bit in the way of a little hook on it. It's an overall, though, extremely smaller storm. Even the amount of lightning has really come down in intensity there too, so good news with that. Still watching our big storm that we do have out there. And again, slowly moving through portions of Harper County. The warning itself that we do have, our latest warning, goes until 6:45 for the severe thunderstorm portion of it. The tornado warning aspect of it still continues for the next 9 minutes until 6:15. And again, it's a slow-moving storm. Our inflow notch, which we're going to circle, might be kind of closing on in a little bit there. It's not as clear in there. You can see a little bit in the way of some what we would call debris kind of showing out, like not debris, but I should say more of some refraction kind of occurring in there. So it's not exactly as clear as it was just a moment ago. So that might be trying to close in and occlude in on itself. That might be what's able to happen there. So that, again, what we're noticing though is the inflow notch getting a little bit smaller, which would potentially signify that it might be trying to cycle again, and we might be able to kind of see it gust itself out. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. But like I said, speaking of debris and damage, let's see if it actually does have any out there. As you can see with our debris tracker, it's what this is going to be picking up on is probably going to be right there. That's what's likely going to be your just strong winds that we do have out there. So we can see that we've got, the rotation has kind of come down there. That's what the National Weather Service is monitoring. So what I have circled right now is our debris tracker. That's not a lot of debris. It's probably a lot of dust that's being picked up because of the strong winds potential there, up to 70-mile-per-hour winds associated with this storm. And our notch is getting a little bit smaller and narrower and kind of thinner. And so because of that, we might be looking at this one also, again, coming on down in intensity a little bit more. That's what it looks like on reflectivity. Velocity, it's still clearly showing rotation. We can't totally just lose it because of how big this storm was, but you can see that the area of reflectivity isn't as clear where that notch is, and it looks like we do have a new tornado warning for it, but it's lost its potential confirmed aspect of it. But it is definitely turning to the Roston area right now. So this area of Roston, we've been saying now that you might be missed. This is getting a little bit closer to where you guys are currently at. So again, it's still a slow-moving storm, but this potential tornado is going to be a lot closer now to the Roston area. So again, make sure that we are taking our precautions, heading down into our lowest level, away from the windows, as again, the Roston area might be now looking at it to be potentially a much more impactful storm, as it's now kind of turning, as the storm is moving south, it's turning to its right. So that would be more to kind of a southwest turn potentially. And so because of that, we've got to watch out for the area nearby Roston, as again, this area, this notch, potentially now making its way more directly towards that area. So again, treat this very seriously. It's got a confirmed tornado tag on it and has been able to produce a tornado at times. We've got extremely large hail with it as well, 70-mile-per-hour winds. There's our new reflectivity update, and you can see that the notch likely not as well defined again. It's kind of looking to be a little bit more ragged there. It's not as clear as it once was, but we still do have to kind of keep an eye out though for that potential, as right now it's lost its confirmed tag on it, but we do have to still watch out for it to be able to spin something back up really quickly. As again, we have only a few more minutes left of it, but the Roston area needs to make sure that we're taking our precautions at this time. We do have so our storm that was over Alfalfa County, over by Jet, which was weakening, pulsing back up a little bit more. There's a new severe thunderstorm warning out for that one now, as it's kind of also turning to its right. So let's lapse these and put these into motion so you can kind of see. When storms turn a little bit more to the right, they're able to spin a little bit more. That's able to get the spin and the rotation going a little bit more. And when that does happen, we're able to get a little bit more in the way of some rotation out of it. This storm that we have by Jet moving towards Goldtree, Hillsdale, Carrier, for example, and towards North Enid, not in Enid just yet, but when it turns that way to the right, which in this case would be kind of more eventually south. If it's going southeast, it would need to turn more straight south for it to be more of a right turn for it. That could usually add a little bit in the way of some strength to it, so we have to watch out for that one. We also have our storm, as you can see, with another polygon coming on out of Kansas. That storm is for the storm that's actually in Harper, Kansas. So that storm, severe thunderstorm warning there, that will continue for Grant as well as Alfalfa until 6:45. That's because of the storm that's currently in Kansas. But as we lapse that one and move that one over the past 15 minutes, you can see that that one is moving basically already straight south. So we've got, like I said, a number of different areas that we're watching, but a number of different directions with our storms that we have out there this evening. But clearly, though, the one that we have to still keep our eye out for will be our one that is within Harper County, as again, that one remains tornado warned at this time. Let's turn off our lightning, as there's a ton of lightning associated with this storm, and go back to our just stationary view. Again, in terms of our hail, you're looking at a hail core maybe kind of pulsing back up a little bit more there. And you can also see by the Roston area up to 80-mile-per-hour winds. So that's what the radar is depicting right there. That's our potential tornado heading towards the Roston area. So again, make sure that we are taking our precautions in the Roston area. Get down to the lowest level, away from the windows, as again, this is a dangerous storm. And even if this storm is now moving a little bit more to its right, so if it's moving from north to south, it'd be turning more to the southwest initially. Not only could the Roston area potentially have the potential to seeing that tornado, we could also see it have more of that hail threat with it as well, that very large hail threat. So that might also be coming through the same areas. So we are still watching this really closely. Laverne, you are not in the tornado warning right now, but you do have to keep our eye out though for that, as again the large hail threat and even the wind threat is approaching the area right now. But we are still keeping an eye out though clearly on the Roston area, as that is where we do have our best chance of there being a tornado. Again, from our reflectivity, you can see that we've got our notch showing up there. And when we take a look at our velocity, again, it's a little bit off center from there. But again, we are taking our precautions seriously in the Roston area. We need to make sure that we are down in our shelter and in our safe spot. Potentially watching out for a new area of rotation. Might be up here. Let's take a look at what that looks like on our reflectivity. So kind of more on the back side of that notch. So there might be another area to watch out for too down the line. But we have to definitely keep our eye out though in Roston as the storm is heading your way right now within the next couple minutes. Again, it's not going to do a very good job showing with the track because of how isolated and how rural this area is. But if we'll just do it this way, just to kind of get that to show up there. Yeah, I mean, we're still talking about it within the next few more minutes here, but I would not put a lot of trust into this timing because, again, it's a lot closer to you than what it looks like. So, again, in the Roston area, make sure that we're taking our precautions, getting away from the windows, lowest level of your house, and just kind of make sure that we bring your phone to, as we are going to be probably waiting still a few more minutes for this storm to get there, just because it's such a slow moving storm, only about 15 miles per hour. So you can even see that in Laverne, you still remain well outside of this polygon area, even though, you know, on the map you're not that far away from each other. That's just because the storm is moving really, really slowly, about 15 miles per hour to the south, and maybe even a little bit more to a more south-southwest direction too. We'll know in a few minutes based on our cancellation of our tornado warning until 6:15. We'll know starting at 6:15 where the new polygon will end up going, because it might be a little bit more straight south and southwest of where things are currently at right now. But we also have surrounding it to a very large severe thunderstorm warning, and that will be going until 6:45 for really the rest of Harper County. As you can tell, I mean, there is not much of this storm that is outside of anywhere else. So it's pretty much contained within Harper County itself. But it does take up almost the entire county. This is a big supercell, but it's just one really that we've been tracking, where there's a lot more in the way of just smaller storms in the northwest corner of the state. Again, we're still tracking that storm that's by Jet. That's got a severe thunderstorm warning until 6:45, takes it just to the north side of Enid, and then the storm that's within Kansas for Grant as well as Alfalfa counties, those go until 6:45. So every severe thunderstorm warning that you have on the map, including the one for our tornado warned supercell, all go until 6:45. So they all will end at the same time. So we'll see what we get with the new updates. But clearly, though, you can tell just by the size of everything, our Jet storm and our Kansas storm coming on in, that's going to be by the Wakita area. Those storms are a lot smaller compared to our massive supercell thunderstorm. And you can see we do have a new tornado warning, as we kind of expected, to kind of be more kind of straight south and even a little bit southwest from there. So let's clear that off, and we'll go to that one. So this does include the Laverne area right now until 7 o'clock. Now, currently, if we kind of zoom in, you can see that we have a lot of different tornado warnings kind of overlapping each other right now, because it was tornado warned for radar indicated, then it was actually confirmed. So the polygon that we have is actually still a pretty large polygon. I'm going to highlight it here because eventually we're going to clear these out. But it does basically take us there to the far southern part, southwest corner of Harper County. and it'll go until 7 o'clock. So Laverne is pretty much now the next place that we have to watch out for. It's going to likely stay to the west of May as well as Dunlap, but it's probably going to be really close right there to the actual Texas-Oklahoma line, right there on the far northwest corner of the state. So still looking at also the potential for 2-inch in diameter hail. So we still have to watch out for that issue as well. And still moving to the south at 15 miles per hour. So we're still looking at the same movement of the storms that we have. And so that's some good news. But we might be looking at potentially a couple of different areas to kind of keep our eye out for in terms of areas of rotation. So there's by Ralston, and then we also have potentially on the north side of the hook as well. There might be another area too. So you'll see it better when we turn on our reflectivity, kind of up there and then definitely right there. Now I will say that our notch by the Ralston area looks to be a little bit more well defined. So it's a little bit clearer now at this point coming on in. So we are probably dealing with a cycling pattern with this supercell thunderstorm. So would not be surprised if there potentially was another confirmed tornado warning out of this at some point down the line. But there might be another area of rotation kind of on the north side of it too. Again, things look a little bit different because the storm is moving straight north to south. So it's not like it's moving from west to east or anything like that. It's moving from the north to the south. So your orientation for how things in supercells typically look might be a little bit different right now. But you'll see now with it being 6:15, we've got kind of a clearing of our warnings. And let's kind of just zoom out, just get everyone's bearings straight to show everybody where we currently are. We have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings for obviously our big one in Harper County for our supercell. But then we got smaller storms coming on in from Kansas. That's going to be for Alfalfa and Grant counties. That's until 6:45. And then we've got our storm by jet. That's going to be heading towards the north side of Enid. That one also goes until 6:45 as well. So we're going to continue to watch these areas. They're obviously still going to be an area that we have to watch out for. But clearly, though, the storm that we have in Harper County is definitely the one to watch, as not only is it far more organized, it's just a lot bigger in general, too. Now, we did have a new update there to our reflectivity. Let's go in and take a look and see if we got any new updates to our velocity scan as well, as sometimes that does happen. So I think we're definitely looking at, in addition to our potential for our tornado, the warning itself is also for up to 70-mile-per-hour winds. That's definitely a possibility with the storms there heading into the Laverne area, those strong winds. So the radar definitely able to pick up on those winds up to 70 miles per hour. That's where our warning goes up to right now. So again, everything kind of working in conjunction with each other. The radar showing a nice picture of not only where the circulation is, but also the chance that we do have that really large hail threat, as well as also that really strong wind threat too. Let's take a look at our hail. Again, that's also another big problem with it too. Now again, what you're noticing right now, our radar is able to, our product is able to detect some of the strongest winds. So probably looking at some not only straight line winds out of this, but also the tornado winds too. So you have up to 100-mile-per-hour winds, which is what this product is showing there, likely down a little bit more from there, but it's definitely possible that we have winds of 70, maybe even up to 80 miles per hour with it. And also the hail core is right there too. So you could be looking at wind-driven hail that could also be very, very damaging, as the winds could be 60, 70 miles per hour, and you could be looking at hail up to the size of, at least 2 inches in diameter. Our model is going a little bit, or our radar product going a little bit higher than that with its estimation, but you get the idea. We could be looking at wind-driven hail that could be up to 2 inches in diameter blowing around in this part of Harper County. So a very dangerous storm outside of the tornado aspect as well. Strong winds as well as that huge hail core are also going to do a lot of damage as well in this area. So we definitely need to keep our eye out still for the storm. And another thing you also notice as well that just popped up too, we'll see if I can get it to show up, but we also have up there too our flood concerns. So let me turn off, just for example, let me just turn off our severe, and what you're going to see is that, we were talking about also the chance for some flooding as well. There's a flood advisory until 9:30 for all the rain that has fallen in this area too. So this supercell producing flash flooding and the potential for some flooding rains. You've got the chance for up to 70-mile-per-hour winds, up to 2-inch plus diameter hail, and that tornado aspect as well. Again, very, very dangerous storm. And some things are helped out by the fact that it's moving only 15 miles per hour to the south, like, for example, giving you a lot of time to take your tornado precautions. But your problem, though, with it only moving at 15 miles per hour to the south is that you're under the rain for a lot longer, you're under the hail for a lot longer, and unfortunately, you're under the wind for a lot longer as well. So there's definitely pros and cons to it being a slow-moving system as of this time. But again, you can see we've got, in addition to our tornado warning, we also do have our flooding as well, in addition to severe thunderstorm warning. So let's put those back up, and so we'll put those back on there. And so now, again, you can see that we've got a number of polygons with that storm as it's moving to the south at only around 15 miles per hour. Now, what we're going to do is kind of zoom back in on our area of rotation, because that notch does not look to be as impressive looking as it did before. It's a little bit closed off again. So just now off to the east of the Roston area, let's take a look at velocity, see if that matches up. So yeah, it does kind of match up right there with where a potential tornado would be, likely just to the east of the Roston area where the actual potential tornado could be, but with it being kind of messy in this area, Roston, we're still taking this seriously and in our tornado shelters and safe spots. But once again, probably not exactly as clear of an inflow notch as what we had a little bit ago. So once again, we might be looking at the storm kind of cycling through, and we might be looking at another uptick in intensity in just a couple minutes once we get new scans. That's definitely a possibility, but at least right now, as of this current scan that we're looking at right now, it no longer looks to be as impressive looking as it did earlier. But we've said that now a couple of times, and then we get a new scan that comes on in, and it looks to be good. The velocity is still definitely there. So again, we are still treating this really carefully. And again, you can see that Laverne is within the path of this tornado warning. It's going to still take you a while to get down there. We'll do a track from this area to show you for Laverne what you can expect for your timing, but you've still got a while until it gets to your area, as it's again only moving at around 15 miles per hour to the south. And so you've got, when it's slow moving like this, sometimes you can't totally trust the times. I would definitely get there faster than not, but you can still see that we might be looking at it to not get to Laverne until potentially closer to 6:45. So you do have time, clearly you do have time in Laverne to get to your shelter and to get to your safe spot. But when they move really slowly like this, sometimes the estimate's not as accurate. So you need to make sure that we're, again, getting there quickly but calmly to where we need to go. Roston area, we're still seeking shelter. We're still down in our shelter right now as that storm is really close to your area. Buffalo, you remain outside of the tornado warned polygon. You've pretty much been out of it for most of this time right now. Still, though, when we turn our reflectivity back on, you got some heavy rain off to your west. But really, though, that heavy core with our hail is going to be between the Buffalo area and Roston. So let me turn off our lightning again. Just want to show you where that was. But we've got a lot in the way of just heavy rain, large hail falling in this area. Obviously very rural, so no spots are showing up. But between Roston and Buffalo, that's going to be where another very large hail core is, and also your heaviest rain is going to be too. This would be to the northeast of Laverne as of right now. But still, watching this storm, capable of producing a tornado. Your tornado warning does continue until 6:45, or until 7 o'clock rather, I should say. The severe thunderstorm warning goes until 6:45. But you can see that from our reflectivity, might be trying to cycle through. As you can see right there by Roston, might be looking at a little bit more in the way of a new area of rotation, a new notch trying to show up right there. So let's go back just a second and just kind of show you. Sometimes it does not like to be as impressive looking, and then it starts to tighten back up again. We might be looking at it kind of on that tightening trend right now. We'll see. National Weather Service obviously keeping our eye out though for it. Yeah, so your low level velocity increasing near Roston. That's what I just pointed out. So we're in sync here. So that's good. So you can see from our velocity a little bit in the way of some uptick there. It shows on velocity a little bit farther out. It's probably getting contaminated by some of the strong winds. But from reflectivity, you can definitely tell it's going to be probably right just to the east of the Roston area would be where our potential tornado could be. Still moving south really slowly at around 15 miles per hour. So between Roston and Laverne, we're in our shelter right now, away from the windows. because again, not only does the storm have the tornado potential, has up to 70-mile-per-hour winds, and also very, very large hail, up to 2 inches plus in diameter is definitely a possibility with this storm. So that's the storm that we're watching, obviously, with the most intently. You can see that we do have additional storms that remain out there in place this evening. We do have 2 more severe thunderstorm warnings that are within northern Oklahoma. One is for the storm by now moving through Jet and into portions of Garfield County. And then our storm that we've been kind of keeping our eye out, though, for from Kansas, that one is now making its way basically on the line, coming on in, and it's going to be moving by the Amarita area. It's going to be probably passing between Byron and Wakita, and this goes until 6:45 for that chance for winds up to 60 miles per hour, and also the chance for quarter-sized hail. Again, these storms that we're kind of keeping our eye out, though, the storm that's closer towards Jet and this one that we're watching coming in from Kansas are a lot smaller, so they're not as intense or as big or as organized, but the threats are still there, just on a lower scale. Up to 60-mile-per-hour winds, quarter-sized hail, definitely a possibility. Clearly, as you can tell, a lot of lightning associated with these storms too. Everything's moving really slowly, but as we animate through, you can see that it's all different directions. Our Kansas storm coming on in, basically moving straight north to south. We've got our storm that's by Jet, and that's been kind of moving more in a more southeast movement. So let's kind of just draw these. So here's our storm coming in from Kansas straight south. Our storm that's trying to eventually make its way towards Enid, making its way to the more southeast. Our supercell thunderstorm moving basically straight south. And as you can see in the Panhandle, let's turn on that one right now just for a second. Oh, I see what they're doing. So we've got a severe thunderstorm warning coming off of our supercell into the Panhandle. That's what this storm is, because what we're noticing is that I think our storm that we're tracking might be turning more and more to its right, which would then be more to a southwest movement. So the National Weather Service in Amarillo, who is in control of the Panhandles, they are probably kind of keeping an eye out there really closely for the potential that this storm might be trying to then maybe eventually turn back into Texas. We don't know that for sure just yet, but if this storm continue to try to turn more and more to the right, that might definitely be what ends up happening. And then you got that supercell that's by Perryton, Texas, where there might be again some interaction, because as you can see, they're not that far away from each other. So let me clear out my arrows that I'm drawing for the different movements, and you can now kind of see that, you know, from a distance standpoint, they're not that far away from each other. The edges of these storms are, you know, about 30 to 40 miles apart from each other. So they're not that far away, but they're both moving really slowly. So we would still be a number of hours potentially until they would have some sort of interaction. This storm, though, by Perryton, Texas, might be trying to make its way more to the southeast. So there's a chance that it may get out ahead of our supercell, but still, as you can tell, they're not that far away, not interacting with each other just yet. But you can see, though, that because they are pretty close, we've started to see some additional little development within that part of the area, as there is that little cell that's kind of moving on in by the Catesby area by Cheney. That little cell has been able to form and kind of move on in. So the ingredients are in place for these storms to be to continue to work through the region. But one thing that we do have to keep an eye out, though, is that, again, the different speed as well as a different direction and movement. As this little cell is moving straight east, can it get out ahead of our incoming supercell? That remains to be seen, but there might be some interaction with this storm and the big supercell in just a little bit if they're able to catch up with each other. And then when you have interaction, sometimes that can either help to hurt the storm and bring it down in intensity, but unfortunately it can also mean that it can then kind of get it to go into a more of a strengthening period and kind of uptick its intensity a little bit more. So we'll definitely keep our eye out for that, as again, we've got a lot of overlapping polygons starting to take place as a result of our storm that we've got moving on in through Harper County. And I think now as we kind of animate it through, you can tell that it's taking that way more to the southwest movement at this point. So let me check with the National Weather Service as we continue to watch out for this storm. Up to tennis ball sized hail with this supercell thunderstorm with a tornado warning on it. We've got, so we're just still watching for our large hail core as well. So we're watching the hail core kind of tick back up in intensity. Let's take a look at that right now. Yeah, so big hail core heading towards the Laverne area right now. And not only is it big in terms of the potential for up to 3+ inch diameter hail, this is a big area too of geographic space within Harper County. So this is a very large hail core in terms of the size of the hailstones, but also just how big it is in general. So again, a very dangerous storm moving through the Ralston area and Laverne. And then the red area that you're seeing there, that's again our product picking up on what would be the worst impacts. And so at that point in the storm, that would be more of the wind impact there, where it could be straight line winds up to 70 miles per hour. Also too, there again, there's that potential for that tornado to be there too. So we could be looking at that threat as well with the rotation being picked up there. So the radar can't determine whether it's straight line winds or part of the tornado itself, but it definitely makes sense that we're looking at some very strong winds out of that regardless within that part of the storm. Let me circle that area and then I'll go to our reflectivity to show you where that is, and that's the notch. So that makes sense there that would be our strongest part of the storm right there. That's the notch that we have to watch out for, and that potentially could be where our radar is being able to pick up on that tornado potential right there. Again, with our new update that we just had there, it's probably turning just a little bit more south-southwest rather than just straight south right now at this point. And so we still have to be very mindful in the Laverne area as it gets closer to you. We are seeking shelter there because, again, whether the tornado passes to the north of us or not, we have extremely large hail that'll be moving on through the area as well that potentially could be doing more widespread damage than a small tornado could. So we are taking our precautions no matter what within this part of Harper County just because of how big and dangerous this storm is. It's slowly moving still, 15 miles per hour. The track times that I would show with our tracks likely would not be very accurate just because of how slow things can go. But if we're going south-southwest from there, if I do it like that, that would put your arrival time in Laverne around 6:47. I would definitely, though, do it sooner than that because, again, this is a very strong, dangerous storm, and the hail potential would also be a problem that would arrive around that same time, if not even earlier than that. So I'd still make sure that even if that ends up being a pretty accurate time, that still get down there as quick as you can to your safe spot or to your shelter. Because again, we are looking at this storm to be moving really slowly. Slow-moving storms sometimes can also have some weird movements and interactions as well where they don't go in the direction that we think they are. So I wouldn't totally trust these numbers, but again, you have some time in Laverne, but I would definitely use this time to get to your safe spot quickly and efficiently, but also calmly too. Again, a lot of strong winds being picked up too with this. So you got strong wind potential. This is going to be a little bit farther away from the radar because we are pretty far away from Vance. We're pretty far away from Amarillo. So we're pretty far away from the radar. So this radar beam that we would have would be pretty high up within the storm. And the storm winds are usually higher in intensity, higher up in the storm itself. So while there is 97-mile-per-hour winds showing up there, I don't think it's reaching its way all the way to the ground, but we definitely have that possibility of at least 70 to 80-mile-per-hour winds is definitely a possibility. Now, one thing we also just noticed too is that our surrounding severe thunderstorm warning polygon changed color as well. So what that means is that we are now up to the destructive tag with this storm. So as you can see with our reflectivity, it's now got the destructive tag until 6:45, and the reason for that will be for our very large hail potential, up to 70-mile-per-hour winds, and now up to 3-inch in diameter hail. So we are looking at major hail with this storm, and as we've shown multiple times now, our product is probably actually doing a pretty good job of showing where that area of hail is, as well as just how big that hail core is going to be. And it's doing a good job showing there's that 3+ inch diameter hail possibility there. So huge hail core from Ralston to Laverne. We're again making sure that we're away from our windows because of that threat potential as well. So again, our severe supercell thunderstorm, our severe thunderstorm warned portion of it, and our tornado warned portion of it just continue to show you how impressive this storm continues to be. Even though it may look a little bit more spread out right now, as you can kind of tell, it's a little bit more elongated, and that might be because it's trying to turn a little bit more to its right to more of a south-southwest movement there, and that might mean that it's kind of reorienting itself with its overall kind of shape and the dynamics of it. So it may not look to be as impressive looking from a radar aspect right now as it did earlier on, but there's still clearly that notch between the Ralston area and the Laverne area. Also want to watch out for our storms that continue to be across more of northern Oklahoma. As you can see by the Garfield area, you've got a little bit in the way of, there's really not much lightning with this storm, so that's good. Doesn't necessarily mean it can't be severe, clearly, but watching a little notch right there to kind of keep our eye out for. It's obviously a much smaller storm, but there might be the areas of some higher reflectivity for the wind threat potential. And then with this storm coming in out of Kansas for Grant as well as Alfalfa counties, again, it's heading towards the Vance Air Force Base radar. So we're going to probably lose a little bit of it again, but there is also a little bit of a notch starting to show up there too with this storm. A couple little areas that we have to kind of probably keep our eye out for down the line. So severe thunderstorm warning continues until 6:45 in this part of the state as well, because we are still noticing really strong winds, really large hail coming in with the storms that are approaching and now coming in from Kansas. So Sand Creek, Vining, Gilbert, as well as areas by Great Salt Plains Lake, need to make sure that we're watching this storm really closely, and we're definitely continuing to monitor this one. The worst of the storm, though, probably passing in between, as you can tell, Amarita and the Wakita area. So it's going to be right in this area that we have to watch out for. Again, very rural spot within the state, but Sand Creek, you got to watch out for the storm heading your direction right now. Still also watching our storm making its way into portions of Garfield County. Looks a little bit better now at this point. And let's see. Taking a look at just a couple of other spots here. Yeah, so we're still watching. Okay, we're going to let the warning for the storm that's moving through Carrier and Goldtree right now, moving into Garfield County, trying to make its way towards Enid. That one is going to expire at 6:45. So that storm is in a downward trend, so that's good news. We checked the lightning just a moment ago, and it had very little in the way of lightning. Typically, you have more lightning in the stronger storm, less lightning in the weaker storm. You don't need lightning to have severe thunderstorm warnings. The amount doesn't matter, but that's some good news there. A sign that things are down a downward trend as the storm is moving towards the Enid area. Clearly, though, could have some gusty winds as the storm is kind of falling apart. The storm farther to the north of there probably is going to hold on to its warning. That one will continue again until 6:45. And then clearly, though, we're watching our storm that is now getting a little bit closer now to the Laverne area. What you're now kind of seeing is a new area of rotation potentially showing up right here by Laverne and north of there. And if we just kind of put a lapse on it just to kind of see what direction that's moving, you can see it's kind of tightening up right there. So there's probably going to be an uptick in the intensity right there just off to the west of the airport. But I think it's moving a little bit more southwesterly, southwesterly. So Laverne, we're still in our shelter, we're still in our safe spot, taking our precautions, but it might be passing just off to your west right now. But we're going to continue to watch that because, again, as you can see, our notch, our inflow notch, tighter with this last scan. Let's make sure that that's the case, and we'll take a look at what it looks like on our velocity. And you can see with our velocity that as we animate it through, we'll go storm relative just to kind of see. Yeah, it still looks to be, it's still definitely there, and I think it is trying to tighten back up a little bit more. Again, like we've said earlier on, we're kind of far away from a lot of the radars that are out there, so the image is going to be taken a little bit higher up into the storm itself. So because of that, it may not be as clear on the low levels, but I've got other products that I can see, and it looks to still be good, impressive there in terms of our rotation. So it is still going, and clearly with it being this big of a storm, we can't just wind it down instantaneously. But still, though, Laverne, Ralston, we are still taking our precautions there. Ralston, you're likely still you're in the clear now, I would imagine. However, what you can kind of tell, though, is back off to the north, because the storm is now becoming more elongated as it moves from the north to the south. There might be a new area of rotation that might be trying to occur to the northwest of the Ralston area, to the northwest of there, and that might have to be an area that we have to watch out for, potentially for a new area of rotation for potentially a new tornado that could be possible there. So if it moves still to the south-southwest, it potentially could still miss the Roston area. But again, you're in your polygon right now. I'd still be making sure that we're seeking our shelter. And again, clearly, as you can tell, there is just a lot of hail with this as well. This storm is producing a lot of hail. So even if we're not exactly talking about a tornado threat where you live, we definitely still have that potential for hail that could be easily 3+ inches in diameter. So very, very large hail remains a possibility with this storm. In fact, the warning that encompasses the entire supercell itself does go up to 3 inches in diameter. So again, it makes a lot of sense that it shows up this high. Now, we also have a number of colors that are on there too. We've talked about this before. That's going to be your winds, and it does show 70, 80 mile per hour winds showing up there in this area. But we are looking at this to be, again, a storm that is producing multiple different impacts. Very, very heavy rain, very large hail, very strong winds, and there's that tornado potential too. So Roston and Laverne, we're still taking this storm very seriously, but it's getting really close now at this point to the county line. As I kind of zoom out and kind of clear off our map, you can see where we currently are. And, then it will cross over into the Panhandle. So there is, Beaver County right there. That warning is to just take into account the storm potentially crossing on over into the Panhandle, because again, it's trying to move a little bit more southwesterly, south-southwesterly. It's not moving straight south like it was earlier on. So that's one area that we have to still kind of keep our eye out for. So again, we are watching that storm. We're also going to be watching, we're still watching the storm that's going to be coming in potentially from Kansas. That one also might be producing some very large hail with it down the line that we're going to have to keep our eye out for. So that storm might also be one that will continue to have warnings on it, which eventually push it into our part of the state. We also have, again, a new severe thunderstorm warning. So we've got our storm. This one is going to expire. So this one will expire in 4 minutes. So now we're watching the storm that's within Grant County and Alfalfa counties. This one, it's got a new severe thunderstorm warning on it that takes all the way out until 7:30. So this storm is now able to produce still up to 60 mile per hour winds and the chance for some large hail up to quarter size. Again, we're really close to the radar itself there, so it's going to be a little bit messy with our view for at least the next couple scans as it gets moving closer to the radar itself. But there is a little bit in the way of a notch also showing up with that one too, west of Wakita. So that storm potentially could also have with it that may be trying to get some rotation with it too. And while it may not produce a tornado, that sometimes will then lead to it just being an overall more robust and stronger storm that could potentially last for longer and also potentially could produce more in the way of some of those strong winds. So we have to also keep our eye out for that storm too. So we then have our storms that are within the Panhandle, and our storm within the Panhandle that we've been watching has been moving basically straight east and southeast. So this storm also by the Perryton area, heading on into Lipscomb County in the far northeast corner of the Texas Panhandle. That one is moving a bit more straight, more southeasterly, but it's all really, really slow. But these are slowly coming into getting closer and closer to each other. And so we're going to see if we get any more impacts out of these storms. All right, we're going to get a new warning for these storms that we've got by the advanced radar. Let's put that one back into, yep, so we got our new warnings going to be coming out for this storm here pretty soon. So watch out for those. But let's go back to our tornado warned storm. As you can see, we've got until the next 17 minutes left of warnings for this. Laverne, we are still watching, and even Roston now too, we're still watching potentially a couple areas of rotation because of our inflow notches that we do have. One is still to the northwest of Laverne, and this one is now very close to the Roston area. And the reason why we've been watching different areas of notches is because our storm is moving from the north to the south. And so if you kind of imagine if the storm is going to turn to this right, it will be turning more to the southwest, which, in our minds is almost kind of backwards because everything either is moving east or southeast with these, tornado-warned storms. And so it almost would be moving backwards, and that's because we don't have much in the way of upper-level steering winds to push it in the way that we normally would have. The jet stream isn't very close by, but it's clearly got enough surface-based moisture as well as rotation to work with, and that's why we're dealing with still with our tornado warnings that we have ongoing. But again, we are watching potentially now maybe 2 areas of concern for rotation, because there might actually be 2 different notches that we do have as the storm is kind of trying to cycle on through and kind of reorient itself as it's kind of getting elongated and stretched out from north to south. So Laverne, we're still taking our precautions right now. Roston, I would still be doing that as well. The tornado warning itself, like I said, goes until 7 o'clock. I'm not going to do a track on things because, again, it's moving really slowly at 15 miles per hour, and I would imagine that we are still looking at it to be a really close call within the Laverne area, whether it actually gets there or not. As you can see with our product, we are talking about strong winds that are right there on that north and northwest side of town, and also extremely large hail too. So we're in our shelter no matter what. We're in our safe spot no matter what, because whether there's strong straight line winds, the tornado, or the really large hail up to 3 inches, if not even larger in diameter, those are all clearly reasons to get away and just seek shelter from this. So again, we are still watching this storm really closely. It's getting closer and closer now to the county line, trying to make its way a little bit more into more of the panhandle. Trying to, at least. It's obviously still within Harper County, but it's slowly moving south-southwest, and that little westerly component in there it's turning right, essentially. So again, a lot going on here with our storm. In terms of there being any more flood activity, that remains also a possibility as well. As we take a look back at our reflectivity, the actual area of flood advisory is back off more to the north, but as you can tell, there's heavy rain everywhere within this storm that we have to watch out for. So this storm is, again, continuing to hold on to its intensity, hold on to its high rainfall rate. And one thing we're noticing, again, it's going to be a little bit of time from now, but in Comanche as well as in Barber counties in Kansas, that storm now definitely has a clearer look now with its own notch. And so within Woods County, we're probably going to watch out for this storm as it makes its way down to the south and southeast. So Cora, Winchester, Alva, Brink, these are going to be areas probably down the line that we have to watch out for. I would not be surprised if this storm potentially goes tornadic within Kansas, and then we might have to deal with that again coming on into Oklahoma. So that'll be another storm to watch out for. In fact, in terms of the severity of our storms, I think this one is storm number 2 in terms of intensity. This is storm number 1, clearly, and then these storms are a lot smaller back off to the east there in Grant as well as in Alfalfa. Those storms now go till 7:30. Now that we're past 6:45, you can see that our little storm that we had by the Carrier area heading towards Enid, that had been, we knew that warning was going to expire, and it now has. So it's going to be, gusty winds, some small hail as that storm continues to collapse as it makes its way towards Enid, but it's a little bit off to your north that we have to watch out for that storm by the Vining and the Gilbert area. That's a storm that we have to watch out for your wind as well as your hail potential. But it's right by the radar, so we're going to have a little bit of a weird look to it there as it moves southward and maybe even a little bit more south-southeast. We will see, because again, lots of storms moving in different directions this evening. So, and I apologize for the sniffling, the allergies, like we talked about with our allergy levels are also very, very high today, and I am feeling it. So you've got now an extension of our destructive severe thunderstorm warning. This now goes until Ellis County. So we've been talking about Harper County from the newscast, and it's all been within Harper County. Now we have our first warning outside of Harper County, and it's now for Ellis County, as you can see, until 7:30. So it still has that destructive tag with it. Let's get the new update from NWS on that information there, because we are going to be going for still 80-mile-an-hour winds and 3-inch hail. So the hail threat still remains definitely there. The wind threat definitely there, but it's still slowly moving south. Well, let's take a look again here at that. Hold on one second. Still moving south at around south at 20. So might be slightly picking up in intensity or in terms of speed. Let's take a look at reflectivity. So what you've got here is, let's animate this. What you've got is, I think the storm is now trying to speed up a little bit more right now. And you can kind of tell that parts of it are staying kind of stationary, like the area by Laverne where the actual hook is. But then the other parts of the storm are kind of coming out of it a bit more, extending farther away from it. So the storm continues to get more elongated, and there are now likely going to be larger areas that would be impacted because of the chance for the large hail and the damaging winds, whereas the tornado potential is still a little bit farther off to the north from there. So it does not get into Ellis County just yet, but that destructive thunderstorm tag for 80-mile-per-hour winds as well as 3-inch in diameter hail, that's still going to set your phone off with the wireless emergency alerts just like a tornado would. But as you can kind of see as we just animate through this, let's zoom in to the area by Laverne. We're probably looking at this kind of tightening up with our area of rotation right there, because that part of the storm looks to be almost kind of stationary, as you can kind of tell. Let me just kind of circle this area right there. It's been like that way for the past few radar scans. So while the storm itself might be getting elongated, this area probably tightening up again, and we're getting more and more of a little bit in the way of that notch showing up. It looks a bit more clear, as you can tell right there. There's more space for air to be ingested and the inflow to be ingested into that. And so it makes sense that that might be a little bit of a tightening there with our area of rotation. Taking a look at our velocity, and again, it's doing that because of how far away we are from the radar. But yeah, we've got, again, a area there that we're watching still of our velocity that is still basically kind of stationary. So we're going to watch that really closely. The reason why it was doing that different direction, or the different colors there, is because it's kind of moving almost straight south again now. And with it being that way, then the radar can't detect if it's moving farther away or getting closer. So it's having a hard time, so it's going to be kind of flip-flopping the color scheme, which is what it's doing right there. But that's why that's happening there, is because of how the storm is moving in position to the radar. That's why it's happening that way. But I think the National Weather Service, like they said, they're watching the area of rotation, and yeah, they're watching it still kind of tightening up right there too. So we're still definitely kind of keeping an eye out on that storm. The tornado warning itself still continues until 7 o'clock, so we still have another 9 more minutes left of that tornado warning. And these are likely going to be probably the only storms that we're going to be contending with for at least the next couple hours. There are some storms that are trying to make their way in from Kansas, and those are still definitely areas that we have to kind of keep our eye out for. But we are going to be watching, I think, really that area by Laverne the closest there. Now, there is another area of rotation by the Ralston area. That's still definitely a possibility for some rotation to pick up on. But right now, area that we have by Laverne is definitely the spot that we're going to be taking more seriously, and definitely the one that we have our attention on. So still a dangerous storm with this as it moves really slowly to our south, and I'd say only around about 15 to 20 miles per hour. So our storms, we've been saying now for about an hour now at this point, that we have very little in the way of steering winds. The storms are moving extremely slow, and because of that, there can be new areas of rotation that are able to pop back up. Our storms are also moving from the north to the south, so it looks a little bit different, a little bit of a different orientation to the actual storm itself compared to what you normally would see. But it's going to be right by Laverne that we have to still kind of keep our eye out for the area of rotation. And there's more of an embedded area by Ralston, but clearly, though, that area is one that we are watching closely. And this will continue until 7 o'clock. Get a new update on any of our other storms that we still have out there. So again, we're going to keep our eye out, though, for that Comanche County, Barber County, Kansas storm. Obviously, we have a while until it gets to the Oklahoma line and into Oklahoma itself, but that's the one to kind of watch out for down the line. Here's our storm that's coming on in from Kansas, and now is right over the radar with Grant and Alfalfa counties, and even a little bit in the way of Garfield County within that severe thunderstorm warning until 7:30. This one definitely the weaker of the two, but as you can kind of zoom on in, there is our cone of silence right there, and that's where the Vance Air Force Base radar is right there, just on the east shore of the Great Salt Lake Plains Lake. So that's why it looks a little bit weird right there. But 60-mile-per-hour winds, up to quarter-sized hail, definitely a possibility with this storm. It's not as organized as our supercell is farther off to the west, but clearly one to kind of keep our eye out for, as it's still in a good environment. But it is a little farther away from the actual boundary that we have to kind of keep our eye out for, the dry line, which is closer to our Harper County storm. So we've got also some smaller cells that were once warned earlier on by Enid. That storm continues to collapse really quickly, so likely just some gusty winds out of that and maybe some small hail, but mainly just kind of gusty winds as it kind of fades away. Another little cell by the Billings area, also by Ponca City. There's a storm that's there too. So there's not exactly a lot of overall coverage area of our storms this evening. We never really anticipated there being a lot of storms. We just knew that there was a possibility that some of them could be strong to severe. I think we did a little bit of, I think these storms are definitely kind of overproducing and overperforming, because these are quite intense, especially our storm within Harper County. Again, that tornado warning remains until 7 o'clock. Let's go back to that now. Again, Laverne, you've got to make sure that we're still taking our precautions right now, as it's, again, really close to you. But we're putting tracks on things 20 miles per hour to the south. Nothing's going to show up there because we know it's a very rural part of the state. But communities that live in the Laverne area and south of there need to make sure that we're taking our precautions and heading to our safe spot, our tornado shelter. And there's our new extension of our tornado warning, basically right there on the county line. So now goes not only from Harper County, and now goes into Ellis County until 7:45. So we're going to continue with this storm, basically moving almost straight south now at this point. There's your Panhandle, for example. So there's Beaver County, and then there is Lipscomb, Texas County. And so we're right there on the division point between NWS Norman, our guys, and then in the Panhandle is NWS Amarillo. So look for this to also be an area too, right along the county line with the Panhandle, and eventually the state line between Texas and Oklahoma, heading towards Shattuck and Higgins. Those will be areas to kind of watch out for, because again, the storm is right there on that line, and the way it's moving right now, kind of straight more south. It was trying to turn a little bit more to its right, so more south-southwest. I think it's now straight south at this point. It's probably going to be going right there along the Oklahoma-Texas line, separating us from the Panhandle going forward. So it's, again, remaining a very strong storm. We'll get the latest now from the National Weather Service in regards to the timing of things. So also looking at huge hail up to the size of 3-inch in diameter south at 15. So we're still moving extremely slow to our south at only 15 miles per hour. Let's go back in on it. And so again, the Catesby area, you guys are just outside of there, but between there and Cheney and Laverne, those are the areas that we have to watch out for and make sure that we are in our shelter, taking our tornado precautions right now. This is the area that we have to keep our eye out for. We've got a good-looking notch now showing up on our reflectivity by Laverne. It's probably going to be just on the southwest side of Laverne, but you've got also very high reflectivity rates showing up there too, so extremely heavy rain is falling, huge hail, like I said, up to 3 inches in diameter, and up to 70 to 80 mile per hour winds is a possibility with this storm too. Let's take a look at all those threats that we do have, and you can see that while most of the threats remain within Harper County, we're not that far away from Ellis County, so it makes sense that we're doing this in advance. But you can see that we do have large hail core heading through Laverne right now, and then also likely just on the west-southwest side of Laverne. That would be where your strongest winds would be, and potentially your tornado will be right there too. So it's our products picking up on 100-mile-per-hour winds. That's definitely a possibility. At least 80 is definitely a possibility with this storm, as it remains very robust. Even though it's kind of spreading out a little bit more and getting stretched out from north to south, it still has a lot of warning criteria to go off of. And would not be surprised if we also get another, for example, another flood advisory, or maybe even a flash flood warning out of this too, because of how much rain and how heavy the rain is associated with this storm. In terms of our velocity, let's take a look at that. Yep, we just got a new update there. So let's take a look at what our velocity looks like. A little bit more messy now at this point. So we've seen this now a number of times, how the storm has looked good, and then it kind of gets a little bit more messy as it kind of cycles through. So this might be what we have right now. Again, this would be our inflow notch right there, but But in terms of our velocity, it's a lot more messy out there. And so I think, again, it's probably going through another one of its cycling patterns that it's been doing now. And it cycles pretty quickly. It seems to be every couple minutes it's able to do that, let's say about every 10 minutes. So it comes down in intensity, and then we're that way for a little bit, and then we get our new update, and it really has tightened back up again. It still continues to do that. And so I think as long as it's close by within northwest Oklahoma, we might be looking at this happening more and more often, where it is able to go through a couple of patterns and go through a couple of different cycles where it's decreasing in intensity and increasing in intensity. I think right now, at least based on this current scan, we're in one of those dips that we have seen where it's down in intensity, at least for a little bit. Clearly, potentially might not last, and so far it has not done that, where it's been actually pretty quick transition to where it's able to then get it back up in intensity again. But we will watch that. And like I said, would not be surprised if we got some sort of alert for some flooding. Here we go with that. So you can see from, well, it's going to be within our destructive, severe thunderstorm destructive tag there. Let's go up here. Yeah, there's your flash flood warning. So because in this, I'm gonna highlight that flash flood warning polygon. So this light green polygon right there for most of Harper County, and then just a little bit there into Ellis County. That's where that goes, and it goes until 10 o'clock. So again, we've been talking now about the speed of this storm. It's moving really slowly south, anywhere from around 15 to 20 miles an hour. That's good, and it helps us out for tracking the tornado chance, as it obviously gives you a lot of time to get to your shelter or to get to your safe spot. But then the downsides to that obviously would be you're under the wind for a lot longer of a time, you're under the hail for a lot longer of a time, and you're also under the rain for more too. And so because of that, makes sense that we're also dealing with some flash flooding potential out of this storm. So that goes until 10 o'clock this evening as our storm remains pretty much doing everything that it needs to. It's producing damaging winds, large hail or tornado threat, and as you can even see too, a ton of lightning. In fact, there's a lot of lightning with this storm. In fact, that Perryton, Texas storm that we've been kind of keeping our eye on for too, that one is now tornado warned, but that one looks to be potentially moving more to the southwest. Let's kind of animate that. The reason why we're talking about a Texas panhandle storm is because we had to kind of watch and see if there's any type of potential interaction down the line, where everything was kind of moving more southeast. Now it's kind of zigzagging, almost kind of looks like there. So again, with these storms being as slow moving as they are, sometimes it is hard to tell what direction it actually is moving in. And this storm within the Texas Panhandle is definitely one of those storms where it might be kind of moving around quite a bit more in terms of its direction. So we'll see if we are going to have to watch out for that potential impact down the line. We're still good right now, Gabe? Okay, thank you. So let me just take a look at what National Weather Service is saying. So let's go back to our Harper County storm, our big supercell. Turn the lightning off again, the prolific lightning makers. So as we're animating through things now, you can kind of see that, yep. So right there, again, we're keeping our reflectivity on currently to show you the notch right there. And let's go through and take a look at our velocity. Again, the reason why it's doing that flashing of the colors is because of the direction that the storm is moving in relation to the Vance Air Force Base radar. Because of how it's moving, it can't tell if it's actually moving farther away or towards it, but that's why it's going to be kind of inverting in on itself, the color scheme there. But what it is showing, though, is that, and again, the beam is going to be pretty high up in this storm, but it is tightening up a little bit more with some of our latest scans there. So it does kind of make sense that there might be still another uptick in intensity that we have yet to go, because as we take a look at reflectivity, that area of that clear slot right there where we have got it circled is looking to be still quite robust and still there. Now you're noticing that we might have a little bit more in the way of some development now on the west side of it, so it might be trying to occlude in on itself again. So that might be happening in a couple minutes from now, where it looks good currently, and then it goes down and does a weakening trend. It's been now happening and cycling now through a number of different periods of intensity where it's up and then down. We might be looking at it currently. It was down a little bit ago, a few minutes ago, up right now. It might be going eventually down again as it tries to get itself occluded and wrapped around itself. So we'll watch that storm, obviously, and continue to watch that storm. We also have our storms that are heading towards the Nash and the Kremlin area in Hillsdale. This storm is now passing over and now moving through the Vance Air Force Base radar. So we still have that one until 7:30. In terms of our lightning with this one, not as much. And it probably looks like it might be holding on to its intensity, maybe even coming down in intensity just slightly. But we'll see how it comes off of its, how it comes out when it comes out on the other side of that of the radar. In terms of velocity and rotation with that one, not much is there currently with that one, but we will see as it gets a little farther away, gives us a better picture. And then we are still watching our storm now in Kansas. Got a new warning out of that one. And the reason why we're talking about Kansas is because, again, that storm that we have until 7:30 in Barber and Comanche County, Kansas, that's a supercell. It's smaller than our Harper County one, but that's a supercell. You can clearly see it's got a nice notch on it, and that is making its way into Oklahoma eventually. Right now, its current time is 7:04, so 7:30 is when this is coming to an end with this polygon. So we probably have about a half hour until it begins to move on its way into Woods County. So we'll see how that goes. And Alva and Freedom, you guys are probably going to be seeing some of the lightning off in the distance with that storm. But clearly, though, our big storm remains our Harper County storm coming now into portions of Ellis County. The warning itself remains until 7:45. The larger destructive severe thunderstorm warning goes until 7:30. So we'll see how that ends up playing out within 25 minutes from now if we are able to get a new update. But you can still tell this is a huge storm. It's encompassing most of Harper County. It's extremely slow moving, so we have a large flash flood warning out for it. At least 3 inches of rain has fallen within this zone during the time of this storm. And we still continue to watch out for that threat for not only the tornado, but also the large hail as it remains, again, that destructive severe thunderstorm warning. It got to that level primarily due to our hail size. And you can still see that by Laverne, we're still dealing with a massive hail core there where we could easily be looking at hail larger than 2 inches, if not even close to 3 inches in diameter. So a very large hail core showing up with this. Might be kind of coming down a little bit, shrinking a little bit more. It's a little bit down right now, but it's been kind of expanding and collapsing throughout majority of its life cycle, just like the winds have also been doing too, in association with the tornado potential with that area of rotation. So those have been both kind of going up and down in intensity, increasing and decreasing in intensity as the storm has kind of cycled through multiple cycles now at this point. But again, that's what we have right now. A lot in the way of some hail potential, wind potential. In terms of our product right now, the strongest winds at this point are now right on the county line between us and also going into the Panhandle, because that's Beaver County right there. So the strongest winds might be just on the county line between Harper and Beaver counties, and eventually potentially trying to make its way into the Texas Panhandle if this still continues to move south-southwest. We will see. Right now, most of our data shows that it's been moving straight south right now over the past about 5 to 10 minutes. But earlier on, we did have more of a kind of southwesterly movement with some of the storms. We are still watching the area, though, of rotation, and I think it's still kind of broadening out a little bit more, as you can see with our areas of rotation. A lot more broad now at this point by Laverne. Let's take a look at reflectivity. Yeah, so your inflow area right there has now tightened back up again. So it's not as open as it was earlier on. So when that does happen, that sometimes can mean that it's occluding in on itself, where it will then cycle down in intensity before it can then spin up again and do it again. We've seen this now happen a number of times, and that's probably happening again currently, because again, that inflow notch on the southwest side of Laverne would be where our tornado would be, but it's likely a little bit more cut off now compared to just a few minutes ago. But still, this is a very rural part of our area, as we know, but areas in Laverne and south of Laverne need to make sure that we are taking our precautions. Roston, as you can tell, you are no longer in the tornado warning, but you remain in the overall severe thunderstorm warning, and I'd still probably keep away from our windows, because as you can see with our hail, there's another hail core coming on in from Kansas now into the far northern part of Harper County, and right there along the Harper County, Beaver County border. So right there at the start of the Panhandle. So right there is another area that we've seen kind of come on in. So we've got tornado warning continues until 7:45 for portions of Ellis and Harper counties. It's been within primarily Harper County now for a majority of its lifespan, and you can see now that it's looking to be a little bit more jagged, a little bit more ragged looking now. We're also now noticing too that that storm that we've been watching within Kansas has now produced a severe thunderstorm warning in it for Woods County. So the storm has not arrived yet. It goes until 7:45. This storm does have a little notch with it, as you can tell, and that's making its way into Woods County. So by Winchester and Cora, these are areas that I have to watch out for down the line for that storm to cross on over. It's a little bit smaller, as you can tell, but still definitely a strong storm that we're dealing with out there this evening. And then our other severe thunderstorm warning storm that we have moving through Nash right now remains, and this one continues until 7:30. Outside of that, though, let's take a look at our composite radar to give you a better idea. So outside of that, there's nothing else in Kansas. There's really nothing else in Colorado, in the Panhandle. So it's really just going to be this zone that we are going to watch for the next couple of hours. In fact, that lines up pretty nicely with where our severe thunderstorm watch is until midnight tonight. So we'll see if these storms continue to last that long until midnight. You know, they very well could because of how slow moving everything is. But let's take a look at what our futurecast is showing with our latest uptick. And so you can see that therefore now our newest model update is depicting where the storms are currently at. It's not exact, but it does show you that there's still some activity that'll bubble up in this area for the next couple hours. But we might not be looking at it lasting very long, and you can definitely tell that the really far northwest part of the state is really the only part that sees any rain out of this. You know, the metro, for example, we might not see any rain at all. So it's going to be a very isolated in nature storm this evening, but that's going to be where we have it until midnight tonight for that far northwest corner of the state, where we currently have circled right now. So let's go back to our level 2 radar, and we'll go back to our Harper County storm. And so again, you've got our inflow notch, which now is definitely looking to be more closed off at this point. Let's just put a lapse on this and animate it through. So there's by Laverne where that inflow notch looked to be a lot better, and now it's kind of closing in on itself as everything is kind of occluding and wrapping on in. But you can also kind of see too a little appendage right there north of the Catesby area, right there on the county line. There might be a new area of rotation, a new hook that's trying to develop in that area. Again, we've been cycling now through a number of times now at this point, and so that might be the trend as it continues farther and farther south towards the Catesby area into Ellis County. So currently, it's been almost all within Harper County. Now we are dealing with not necessarily so much in the way of the tornado potential just yet within Ellis County, but you got a lot of heavy rain already making its way into the area, maybe even some hail too, and that hail is going to be making its way on into Ellis County here shortly. Now, as we animate through this, what you're noticing are a couple different things. First off, though, it looks like we had kind of one core over Laverne that is now kind of collapsed out as it kind of spread out more. And now that core has now moved farther to the kind of more southwest of Laverne within that last scan. So when these storms are slow moving like they are, you can kind of get some erratic movement where they will be kind of changing direction a little bit more. That happens when they occlude in on themselves and they kind of wrap around themselves, and that's likely what's happening here now south of Laverne. So Roston, you guys are good to go now at this point in terms of your tornado potential as well as your hail potential too, as it's farther to the south of you. We're still watching that little core coming on in there. Yep, and we actually got a new severe thunderstorm warning out of that in far northern parts of Harper County until 7:30. So it's because of actually this little area. In fact, it's easier to tell with our hail core that was because of that area right there that produced another smaller severe thunderstorm warning up in the far northern part of Harper County. So the big area is farther to the south, but technically what we're dealing with right now is technically two storms that have kind of split off from each other. And so we have one storm here, and then this is mainly our big storm that we've been dealing with right there. So those are now kind of two little separate storms that we've been able to see. And the reason why we have seen that split is because they've been kind of ripped apart. They've been kind of spreading out more and more, and there are slower moving sections and faster moving sections, and so we've kind of split them apart, and now we've got two areas to watch out for. So that's why there's another polygon in the far northern part of Harper County that we'll still continue to keep our eye out for. So definitely not as strong or as intense. There's really not much in the way of rotation up there, but It's still all by and now really south of Laverne. Again, we'll do a track as best we can, but it's really not going to pick up on anything. But I would say definitely now at this point that the Catesby area, and you guys need to make sure that we're taking our precautions, as well as the Cheney area too, as this area of rotation is still heading into your direction. In fact, there's probably a number of different areas of rotation that we're kind of keeping our eye out for. And let's take a look at what it looks like on velocity. Yeah, there's another area too that we've got right. Let me clear this off. We got another area kind of right there, still by the southwest side of Laverne, and then also over into the Panhandle too. There are a couple of areas that we can see as the storm is kind of, again, it's moving really slowly. So with it moving really slowly, you get more in the way of some erratic storm movement and behavior, and there's more in the way of some little areas of rotation that are starting to show up a little bit outside of our tornado warned areas. So we might be looking at the Panhandle trying to get by slap out, for example. There might be a warning that comes out for that because, again, we might be looking at our storm trying to push a little bit more southwesterly at this point. Again, where we've had a little bit more of a southward movement recently, we might be looking at trying to move more southwest, and then we try to push it back out there. Again, it's erratic movement and behavior, so we're definitely looking at it to be on the west side of Laverne. But you can see now that there might be some areas of rotation that are embedded because that no longer looks to be good anymore. But there is an area right in there that looks better on the velocity where there's an area of rotation. Yep, right there. And so that's now rain wrapped, and that's going to make it hard to see there. And like I said, there might also be other areas too within the Panhandle of Beaver County that may have to kind of watch out too. So just off to the east of Slapout, there may be another peripheral kind of warning that has to come out there just to kind of account for that. As you can kind of see with our latest reflectivity updates, more of it is kind of spilling on over into the Panhandle right now. So we continue to watch these storms. We're also watching storms coming in out of Kansas. So we'll go to that storm. That is now moving on now into Woods County until 7:45. This is severe thunderstorm warning there. Probably looking at just your typical 60-mile-per-hour winds. We got a new update there. There was a pretty large hail course, so our hail is likely pretty big with this storm crossing over from Kansas right now. And then we do have our storm that's coming now away from the radar. So our Vance Air Force Base radar is now no longer underneath this storm. It's now coming away from it. So it's moving through Nash and Pond Creek and Hillsdale. That goes until 7:30, so we have another 14 minutes there. We have our earlier warning storm that is now collapsed and now moving through Enid. So no warning for Enid just yet, but Kremlin and Hillsdale up in the northern part of Garfield County, that is where our severe thunderstorm warning is until 7:30. Again, this storm isn't as strong as the one coming in from Kansas right now, or clearly our Harper County storm, but still one to keep our eye out for. In terms of lightning, a lot of lightning with all these storms, but you can tell overall though these are much smaller than our big concentration of storms off to the west. And you can even see by Ashland, Kansas, again, there's another destructive severe thunderstorm warning in Clark County, Kansas there. So there's also the potential too for a storm to possibly become an issue as it makes its way into Harper County again. So we'll see. A lot of areas of rotation that we're watching though within Harper County as it's getting kind of messy now at this point. Definitely does not look to be as organized in terms of, the good one singular inflow notch. The hail size also come down a little bit too, up to 70-mile-per-hour winds. So we're still obviously very high up in intensity with the storm, but might be coming down a little bit in terms of our wind as well as our hail threats. The strongest winds at this point are showing up within more of the Panhandle right there on the county line. So still an area to watch out for, also into far northwest Ellis County as well, within its larger destructive severe thunderstorm warning around it. So we still have for these warnings to expire, but these are again turning just ever so slightly off more to our southwest, and because of that they're getting a lot closer now to the Panhandle border as well as eventually into the Texas Panhandle. So we're really close there to kind of riding out to the edge of our area. But still an area of rotation that we are watching out for again, from Laverne to the Catesby area, right in here is our area of rotation that we were watching. But as you can now see, it's a little bit more closed down in. It's not as clear of a shot anymore into the storm. So the inflow notch is not as clear looking as what it was earlier on. And so because of that, might be looking at it, again, it backs up why the National Weather Service coming down from 80 miles an hour to 70, from 3-inch in diameter to 2-inch in diameter. So everything kind of on a downward trend with this cycle span over the past couple minutes, which is good to see. So we want to obviously keep on going down in intensity, but you've got right there also to the north of the area of circulation, that would also likely be where your heaviest rain is, and also still too where you're looking at that potential for some of that really large hail. Yep, right in that same spot. So I think Laverne now, you are looking at most of your threats now to be over for you. Very heavy rain continuing currently in Laverne. But generally to the southwest of you is where you have the major problems in terms of the large hail core, which is just on the southwest side of town. And then even farther, a little bit south from there, that would be where our potential tornado would be. But now we're running into the potential where it could be rain wrapped. So it would be hard to see if it's out there. We only had it confirmed one time for a warning. After that, it's been all radar indicated tornado warnings. But you still have some areas of rotation, strong winds also coming out of it too, but it might be that we might be seeing this potentially becoming a little bit more outflow dominant, where it might be trying to blow itself out. So we'll see if that ends up happening, but makes sense. The destructive tag still makes sense for the large hail, and you can clearly see for our very strong winds within this area too. And then it would also be right around here and likely just to the north of where I got highlighted. That would be where our area of potential tornado would end up being in place. So we're getting a couple more updates here. Ping pong size and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts for our Garfield County and Grant County storm. So we'll go to that one. Let me clear that out. Okay. So the reason why we have this warning, it's not because of the storm that's currently over Enid right now. Dale and Kremlin. So this storm is not the reason why it's warned. It's this one right here. So that one is moving southward at around 20 miles an hour. So this potentially could make its way towards the Enid area. This one, though, as you'd imagine, just looking at it, you can tell that it's a bigger storm. It's a little bit more robust. Not much in the way of rotation with it currently, but 60-mile-per-hour winds and up to ping-pong-sized hail is possible with this storm as it makes its way farther south through Kremlin and eventually towards Enid and the northern side of Enid, and potentially all the way through Emu and Shea, Fairmount, Wacomas. These are all areas that I'll eventually see storms moving on through. That one, let me take a look at how fast that one's going for. So this one's a little bit farther, faster at 30 miles per hour. So let's do a little bit of track on this storm. And so you can again see that Hillsdale around right now as it's making its way through the area. Ituna at 732, Jonah at 737, Blanton at 740, and you can kind of see it gets into North Enid at 742 and Enid at 745 should the storm still continue. So it's raining where you are currently in Enid with that little cell that's over you right now. That's not the warned storm, it's behind it. That's the one that we have to be watching out for. That's got up to ping-pong-sized hail and also the chance for up to 60-mile-per-hour winds. Heavy rain too, although this storm is moving faster at 30 miles an hour, so that's a good thing in terms of keeping the flood potential down. That won't be a problem there. And then we're also watching our Woods County storm too. As that storm is coming on in from Kansas, that one is also looking to be pretty good in intensity as well. And that one is likely increasing in intensity too. Got a report of ping pong size and quarter sized hail in Hillsdale. So right in Hillsdale right now, you're getting that area, the area of larger hail is right on you. Now it's not, well, it shows up big on this, and it's a possibility that it could be getting up to that big. We know the storm is on its upward intensity. This one is. So there is a chance that my product is actually doing a good job of the estimation there. Even if it's not 3+ inches, we know it's getting bigger now than ping pong size. So the Hillsdale area, not so much of a tornado potential with you, more so the hail potential. So again, get your car in, get away from the windows, and especially if this ends up being a larger hailstorm, by getting away from the windows and to your safe spot in your shelter, you'll be prepared in case this really does produce some of the larger hail. Again, my product is an estimate, so it's not going to always be exact. But if it's doing that, it does show that it's definitely a hail core worth watching out for. In terms of other areas of hail that we do have, the one that's coming on into Woods County has a hail core too. Maybe not exactly as large, but it's still there. So that's going to be another issue to watch out for. And then clearly, again, just off to the west and southwest of Laverne, we're still watching that area where our tornado warning is. We've got the chance for, there's our 3+ inches, and then also there's our 70-mile-per-hour winds. As again, this overall storm remains not only tornado warned until 7:45, but also has the destructive tag for the severe thunderstorm warning that surrounds it for the 80-mile-per-hour winds and for the 2-inch plus diameter sized hail that we could be seeing. So again, very, very dangerous storm, but it is right there just east of the Beaver County, Harper County line, just east of the Panhandle with Oklahoma, and eventually once you get towards the Catesby area, then you're close to the Texas Panhandle. So it's right there on the line, right there in the division between a lot of different areas. Obviously a pretty rural spot, but again, these communities need to make sure that we're taking our precautions very seriously because while the tornado potential is there, it's going to be a pretty small area that we'd have to be concerned about with a tornado. It's a much larger area that we've been dealing with the strong winds and that hail core too. So everything is in play with this supercell as it continues to work its way through Harper County and now into more of Ellis County. And it's still going now with our tornado warning until 7:45. And then the larger, and then our larger area of destructive severe thunderstorm warning for the next 5 minutes. So we'll see. That's pretty close to when we'd have a new update right now. Let's go back to our reflectivity. You can kind of see what we're dealing with. Let's see. Let's also see too that will animate through things. Just kind of put things in motion. Just kind of show you what we've got going on because we still have to kind of keep our eye out though for that Texas storm. Now, right now it looks like the latest update, it was moving southeast, then it's moving kind of more south-southwest, and now it's looking more like it's moving straight south with that latest polygon that it's got. The National Weather Service in Amarillo had to go with a pretty big polygon to take into account the fact that it's basically stationary, and when it's stationary, it's then hard to determine which way it's actually moving. So we'll see if that ends up trying to make its way eastward. Right now, the latest indications is that it's not, so it will likely stay out of our area for a little bit longer. And then we also have by the Ashland, Kansas area, that storm continues to have its destructive severe thunderstorm warning tag with it too, as that one also has very large hail and damaging winds. So I think besides our tornado threat that we've been dealing with, our hail threat really remains our biggest concern going forward with a lot of these storms. But even still, up to 80-mile-per-hour winds is definitely some possibility there. Getting reports of some localized flooding in Laverne, and just kind of as we watch our reflectivity, you can kind of tell that right there, we're getting more of the notch starting to show back up again. Let's take a look at our velocity. Yeah, so it started getting tightened back up again right there by the Catesby area. We're going to circle that area right there. So again, it's along a lot of political boundaries in terms of the separation from the Panhandle and also eventually from the Texas Panhandle too. So it's kind of right there at that triple point of all those counties where we're dealing with likely the potential tornado and that new area of rotation that we continue to watch out for. So as you can kind of see, we got a new little update there with our tornado warning polygon. They kind of shrunk it out. So Laverne no longer in that polygon anymore, but we are still watching by the Catesby area really closely. And then they got a little bit messy again on that last scan. So it does show you that that the storm continues to cycle and cycle through multiple times. That it's kind of upticking, downward trend, upticking. So let's erase that, and we'll still be like by the Catesby area, Cheney, and then Tuzalin. I apologize if I'm not saying that right. Northwest of Shattuck, within Ellis County. That's an area that we have to probably watch out for a potential new warning down the line. So this warning continues until 7:45. I think because our storm is kind of moving a little bit faster now, it's getting closer to the edge of the actual polygon The notch looked good just a scan or two ago, and now it no longer looks to be as good anymore as it kind of closed back in. So our cycling pattern is probably happening pretty quickly, where you get a couple scans where it looks good, then a scan where it's not so good, back up again. We're probably looking at that to be, just a minute ago was on an upward trend, maybe now on a downward trend, just kind of going up and down with our intensity, which makes it very difficult to determine when it's going to finally spin itself out. Has clearly not done that yet. This is a big storm, though. It's kind of getting stretched out more, like we've been saying, and at this point, really kind of almost splitting at this point, because you can kind of tell there's now two distinct storms. By Roston and by Gate is another area that we have really at this point now, kind of two storms as they've kind of been pulled apart and separated. So it looks like we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that just came out for that. Let's take a look at what that. So that goes down all the way towards Shattuck and Goodwin in Ellis County until 8:15. And they're just going to keep on going with it down the Texas line with Oklahoma. So it's still moving basically straight south, still at around 15 to 20 miles per hour. So a very large hail. But we'll see if we are able to continue with our tornado warning with it, because we still have that area of rotation north of the Catesby area, now well southwest of Laverne, which is good. But that would be where our area of rotation would be, right there. The hail cores come down in intensity a little bit, but it's now showing that we're still up to 2 inches in diameter. So while the hail is quite large, might be coming down a little bit slower, shrinking a little bit more as it kind of slows down a little bit in its intensity picking up. So that's good news. So downward intensity right now with our smaller hail up to 2 inches in diameter, 70-mile-per-hour wind. So that's definitely still a possibility, both straight line as well as potentially where that potential tornado could be. So we know it's moving fast right there, but it's going to be hugging right along the Oklahoma-Texas line, at least throughout the next little bit of time here. That tornado warning goes until 7:45. The actual severe thunderstorm warning out ahead of it will continue until 8:15. So it goes out for a while now. As we take a look at our Woods County storm, that's a big area of very large hail now at this point. So that hail core within Woods County is large, and at least based on my product, is our largest area that we do have. Now there's a little bit of a notch that does show up there too. It's not as impressive looking as earlier ones, but it would be right there. And then if we take a look at our velocity, it's very slight, not really much there, probably in its beginning stages if it were to do anything. But that would be another area to watch out for. On my off-screen area that I can see with my product, yeah, the area of rotation is quite small and not very strong, but it does kind of show that it's at least there. And then thankfully our storm that we have coming on through now pretty quickly into Garfield County and towards Enid, this storm, that's moving a lot faster. We'll turn our lightning on to show you that it's also on a downward trend too, but it's moving quite fast. So that one's a lot faster moving, and you can just kind of see overall, as we're moving away from the radar, we're going to get a better view of it now. But you can even see as we're getting away from the radar, it is kind of shrinking a little bit more. But it is also catching up to our storms that were earlier on, moving on through the Enid area. So there might be some interaction that we'll have to watch out for going forward. But at least as of right now, this one's on its downward trend. And while it's not a giveaway every single time, typically if we have less lightning, it's weakening down a little bit more, and that's also what's happening too. There's not as much lightning with that storm anymore. But we've seen it now a number of times how these storms have kind of phased in and out and gone up and down in intensity. And that's definitely still a possibility with this storm, which thankfully it has not done so yet. So we continue to watch basically 3 areas of storms that have warnings on them. Our Garfield County storms now at this point, our Woods County storm, and then clearly still our Harper and Ellis County storms that we continue to deal with. We are still having those out there. Now, good thing, as you can kind of see right now, sometimes this will happen to where there's a slight delay, but the good thing is that we no longer have a destructive tag with this severe thunderstorm warning, so that's good. So it's come down enough to lose that. But unfortunately, one thing we do kind of see by the Catesby area is that now we got a little bit of a better looking notch right there in terms of what it looks like on our velocity. Yep, starts to show up a little bit better again. So this thing has been going up and down, cycling through multiple times, and it might have been just doing just that. So there's going to be a new tornado warning that's going to come out for that storm right now because unfortunately it has cycled back up again, and it's now at the very edge of the polygon. So again, the Catesby area, need to make sure that we're taking our precautions, getting away from the windows, as there's going to be a new tornado warning issued for your area. We'll see if Cheney is in there. You're going to be really close. But it's going to be, again, right there along the Texas-Oklahoma line, right there to the north of the Townsend area, and north of Shattuck is likely going to be where this new polygon will be drawn in this area right here. So, again, it is a very rural part of our town, or of our state, but still, there are a number of communities that are out there, and we need to make sure that they are informed and taking their precaution. So we'll wait for that warning polygon to populate here in just a moment. And let's see, we're also going to be noticing, our storm in Woods County, that's going to be having hail up to 2 inches in diameter. So this storm is on its upward trend. We showed you that hail core before, and it's still definitely there in the northern part of Woods County. So that is still also an area to watch out for too. We've been watching that storm, and I think that's probably got the biggest hail now at this point out of any storm that's out there, even bigger than a big supercell within Harper and Ellis counties. That's definitely going to be the one that's got the largest hail with it. So coming towards the core area, again, we're making sure that we're probably going to be wanting to get away from the windows with this one as well. If it in fact ends up being 2+ inches in diameter, that'll do some damage really quickly. So it's going to be to the west of the Winchester area, north of the Tea Garden area, north of Cora. But that is where our area of really, really large hail is, right there, just crossing on in to Oklahoma right now. You can see even with our reflectivity, where the darkest colors are, that's where it is. Now, thankfully, in terms of any rotation, it's quite broad, and in fact, really not really present all that much right now. But that's going to be likely where our largest hail is going to be too. Okay, so we've got, take a look here at where we stand with our tornado warning. Yep, and there we go. So we got our new tornado warning that goes until 8 o'clock, so it's now for the next 24 minutes. It is all within Ellis County at this point. Let's clear things out, and you can kind of see that, again, based on our reflectivity, that's where it looks like. So that is where we have our inflow notch right there. And again, it looked good there frame ago, and now it's no longer as impressive looking. Still clearly there. Let's go 20 miles an hour, see what we get. Yeah, Tucson area at 8:05 arrival time. Let me check officially to see what the speed is on this. Probably very slow moving, 15 miles an hour. Yep, 15 miles an hour. So it's a small tornado warning right there in the very edge of the state, and it's a very slow-moving storm too. Again, only 15 miles per hour. But you can see now that farther back off to the north from there, that our storms have now broken off into two. So what was once a large, massive supercell thunderstorm is still very big, but is now looking to be a little bit smaller as it's kind of spread apart and kind of broken apart a little bit more. So you've got between Gate and Buffalo, essentially a different thunderstorm that is there. I'm currently not warned there for anything, as clearly it's right behind the storm that's using all of its ingredients to work with. But that is where we do have still our best chance for tornado. And the reason why this has rotation with it and the storm back off more to the northeast from there into Woods County, that storm, the reason why that storm doesn't have as much in the way of rotation is because this storm is closer to the boundary. The storm is closer to the dry line, and so with there being not much else to work with in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of there being a good jet stream and things like that, or a low-level jet, because of that, we need to have something out there that will help to get it to spin, and that's happening out in the northwest corner of the state, and it's not as apparent farther to the northeast that you go from there. Obviously, still hail will be a big problem. But the tornado potential with this storm likely not going to be as high as what this storm is that we have currently moving on through from Laverne on south through the Catesby area. So that's the reason why that's likely going to be how things stand going forward, is that these storms that are out here, and I'll circle them, that storm, those are probably not going to get much in the way of rotation with them because they're farther away from the area that you could get rotation off, closer to the boundary, which also is the reason why there's more storms just in overall number right in this zone too, because it's closer to that boundary. Whereas over here, you're farther away from the boundary, and these storms are obviously still holding on to their intensity, but they were closer to the boundary when they were in Kansas. They came off that boundary, and they've just been able to still continue, but they don't have the robust nature of the large hail like they had earlier on when they were in Kansas, as they once did. And they were also had a little bit more rotation when they were in Kansas earlier on too. But these would be considered supercells. Just the rotation to produce a tornado likely just not going to be as present as it is farther off to the west from there. We continue to see these storms moving on through the area of the northwest corner of the state. We have our severe thunderstorm watch that will continue until midnight tonight in this part of the state. The metro not included in this watch currently, and it's actually a possibility that locations outside of this watch get very little in the way of any rain. So it's likely going to be a dry night for most of the area. You know, total population-wise, most of the population of Oklahoma will not see rain tonight. But we do have within this spot of the state, closer to where that boundary is, that potential for those storms, and that's why we're dealing with them. Again, the total number of storms, like we've been saying, is likely not going to be very many, so I don't think we're looking at much more storms than what we currently have out there, but they're clearly packing a punch. So Watauga, Longdale, Fairview, you got some little showers there with some rumbles of thunder embedded in there. Nothing severe at all. Really, though, it's this storm moving through the Catesby area that we remain the most concerned about. Like we've seen now a number of times, how the notch looks good and impressive, then no longer as impressive looking anymore. That's the case right now in terms of our velocity. It still shows up, but it's not as impressive looking as it was maybe a couple minutes ago as things continue to cycle through and cycle through. Check just a couple more products off screen. Yeah, so that area of rotation that we have, and there's probably still a number of them. There's also, and that can show you, because there's another notch right out here within the panhandles, right there. And now I got a new scan, maybe not as impressive looking anymore, but right there, that would also be another area of potential rotation too. So this would be on the border with us and the panhandle, so just outside of our viewing area. That is where we have another area of rotation starting to show up there too, because the storm is now still, I think, slowly trying to track its way a little bit more south-southwest. There's still a westerly component, I think, to its movement as more and more of the storm continues to cross on over into the panhandle. As we kind of zoom out and animate through our laps, that'll be more apparent and easier to see. Let's go 30 minutes and just kind of zoom out, and you can see how things are moving now at this point. Yeah, so more and more of the storm is extending and expanding out into the panhandle at this point. So we are going to see how many more warnings make their way into our area. Right now, that area of rotation, that inflow notch, as it heads towards and just to the north of the northwest of the Shattuck area, continues to get closer and closer to the Oklahoma and Texas county line, or Texas border with our county lines, and it's right there just to the north of that of the Shattuck area within Ellis County. So it's getting closed off once again. Still looks to be impressive sometimes, other times not so much, but that storm is the one that we have the tornado warning still on it for. It technically goes until 8 o'clock, but it's now, I would say, past at this point the Catesby area where that area of rotation would be. And you can still see it's just, I mean, we're only talking a couple miles away from the Texas-Oklahoma line. Yeah, 2-3 miles away. So it's going to be right in there that would have that area of rotation. That right there would be where our tornado would be. And it's still got, you know, a number of miles until it gets to the Tuzalan area, farther south within Ellis County. Okay, 70-mile-per-hour winds and up to now baseball-sized hail with our storm in Woodward as well as in Woods County. So that's this storm that we've been watching. Yep, got a destructive tag on it now too. So this now is likely going to be the one that has the worst hail with it. We'll take a look at what that looks like. And yeah, that definitely is where it shows up. We've been now seeing on our product that 3+ inch hail showing up now for quite a while. It's an estimate, but it's been doing a good job showing that that's where our hail core is, and it's gotten big. And so now we have an official warning for it to be up to baseball size. So we're closing in on 3-inch in diameter hail with that anyways. But it will be for Cora and Fair Valley and Freedom, the Avard area. These are areas that have to watch out for. Again, in terms of any tornado potential, we'll take a look at our velocity. You're not going to see very much of it there. Yeah, you're not going to see very much of it there. There is a little bit of a notch that does show up because this, again, this is a supercell, so there is going to be some rotation with it. But thankfully, though, at the low levels, it isn't as apparent as our Harper County and Ellis County storms have been off screen to your west. But with it being a notch, does show that that is a supercell. And when you have a supercell, you can get the higher end threats like your stronger winds, your larger hail. So that's the reason why we have our notch right there. Even though not tornado warned currently, big hail possibility with this one. Again, north of Cora by a number of miles. This storm is moving, I think, a little bit faster than everything else was on the Harper County, Ellis County line. Oh, this one slowed down 15 miles an hour. This storm has actually slowed down as it's now come on into from Kansas into Oklahoma. So let's put a little bit of a lapse on that. And you can tell that, yeah, the past couple scans, it really kind of slowed itself down. So when it does slow itself down, sometimes that does mean that it's trying to get its act together and it's able to get a little bit more in the way of rotation, spin up a bit more. So that makes sense that it's doing that. As we've seen our hail really begin to increase in size, it's also slowed down too. So you've got a while to let it to go in Cora as well as Fair Valley, but not by very much. So let's take a little bit of a lapse on that one. We'll put it from the notch as it moves south. 15 miles an hour. Let's go to 20 just to be sure. Yeah, so Tea Garden shows up at 8:03. So it's still a ways away from you. But again, this is a storm that's got very large hail and is actually the one that is increasing in intensity, whereas the other ones are decreasing in intensity. So there very well could be a time here pretty soon where this storm is the one that is the most intense out of everything that we have out there. So we'll see. No tornado warning on that one right now. Maybe in the future, but right now, thankfully, not as much in the way of rotation as what we've seen with other storms off to the west more. Yeah, so there we go. Now you can see this is a new addition. So it's in Texas, as you can see within Lipscomb County, Texas. But because that area of rotation is now at this point, I'd say like right on the state line, you've got the potential there for more and more of Texas to be getting more and more of that tornado potential. I think if there were to be any notch within Oklahoma right now, it would be south of the Catesby area and would be rain wrapped there, as that notch now looks to be much more closed on in. It's much more closed in, not as impressive looking. It's not as open, not as much air can go into it at this point. So there might be something rain wrapped if there is the case. But definitely at this point now, I think our storm is turning a little bit more to its right, so which would be more of a south-southwest movement like it did earlier on as it came in out of Kansas before it then kind of rode the county lines like we've had recently until now. I think it might be looking at turning a little bit more southwest, south-southwest than what it is currently has been doing. Okay, just checking a few things here. Yeah, let's take a look at our hail core. The hail core is not as big by Catesby as earlier on. So this storm, in terms of the hail size, has come down in intensity, which is good news. But the hail is still big, but we're looking at it coming down, which is good. But again, this tornado warning goes until, for our part of the area, it does go until 8 o'clock. So we have 13 minutes left of this tornado warning that we have within Ellis County now. All the other warnings that we had within Harper County in terms of the tornado warnings have been able to expire or be just kind of canceled out early. So now our tornado warnings are all within Ellis County, right by the Catesby area, but it's really getting close now to the Texas line. and potentially, if it continues on this trend, might actually make its way into more of Texas within the next about 20 minutes or so, at least the tornado warned section of it. The hail core probably going to stay really close and likely just east of the Texas-Oklahoma line and stay within our area. But the tornado part of it might begin to kind of move just a little bit off more to our west. As we take a look at our reflectivity again, still looking at that area of potential rotation by the Catesby area. Not as impressive looking. Probably a better look right there. And again, as you can tell, that would be within Texas. So that would be within Lipscomb County, Texas, where that would be where that potential new tornado that would end up being the main one, that would be where that would be. We still keep an eye out for this storm that we have within Woods County. Got the destructive tag on it. Again, huge hail associated with this one, but it has come down, so it might be downward trend currently. Not saying that's how it's going to be for the rest of the evening, but that one is now down to the hail size of around 1.5 inches, at least based on my product. But a lot of times it will, like most of our storms have this evening, kind of come down and then pulses back up again. And so we'll see if that one is able to come back up as it makes its way towards Cora. But we know it has a history of huge hail, so again, make sure that we're taking our precautions in the Cora area as well as Fair Valley and Freedom. Slowly 15 miles per hour. So again, the track is not going to be very accurate in terms of that because it's a little bit slower at that time. But Cora, Fair Valley, Freedom, you need to make sure that we're taking our precautions and getting away from the windows. As again, if it is still producing up to 3-inch in diameter hail or greater, and my model product has not picked up on that just yet, that can do obviously a ton of damage and potentially could be doing more destructive widespread damage than any tornado would. And then as we take a look at our storm that's now heading through Enid, it's right over you guys right now in Enid. This continues until 8 o'clock, so another 15 more minutes. Within Enid, we're not really seeing the huge hail with this one, as the storm itself is a lot smaller. But you can see maybe up to around quarter size inch hail. There's still that shows right up with my product there, 1.5 inch. So I don't think it's that big. Again, this is an estimate, but we've been seeing with some actual real reports on the north side and then kind of the northwestern side of Enid that we've got up to a lot of penny sized, up to dime sized, and up to quarter sized hail with some of these storms. So again, thankfully the one moving through Enid, not as strong as the ones farther off to our north and to our northwest. Again, the wind threat likely not as high either, up to 60 miles per hour. I think our hail threat's our main issue, and even that's not as bad, just because, as you can tell, it's an overall smaller storm, and in terms of the amount of lightning that this storm is producing, there's less of it now going forward. But it's kind of spreading itself out a little bit, so we'll see, and we'll track that. It may still be able to make its way, maybe down the line, potentially makes its way towards the North Metro. We do have these little showers and rumbles of thunder from Watauga towards Canton and O'Keene. Those have never been warned. And in fact, these were never actually a severe thunderstorm warned storm at all. They just kind of popped up. But thankfully, they remain very, very weak. So these storms, we'll see what they end up doing if they're able to keep on their intensity. They're getting farther away from the good environment to continue to be severe. So I'm not saying it's going to die out before it makes its way to the metro, but I think the overall chance of it having anything severe within the metro is pretty limited and pretty slim with these storms. But we will still keep an eye out on how these move through. But thankfully, they are not producing as large of a hail as it is within Woods County. So we'll go back to that Woods County storm. A lot of lightning with that one. Let's take a look at our product there. Again, you're still seeing a lot in the way of a large area of hail, but in terms of our actual main zone that we're watching, down a little bit from the last couple scans from a couple minutes ago. So the downward trend on this one might be apparent, but we'll see. Most things have been cycling through this evening, and this storm potentially could be no different. So we could be looking at it still being able to go down before it kind of wraps itself up. But again, in terms of a tornado potential, this one does not necessarily have that as much. It's a little bit farther away from the actual boundary that we need from a velocity standpoint. There's really not much there. So that's good news. Let's go back to our tornado warned storm. And again, as it moves this way now, farther south, away from the radar, it's riding right along, as you can tell, the panhandles and also between us and Texas. So we're still going to be looking at this one to be right there along the state line. Might be trying to look at a new little notch trying to show up might be just south of the Catesby area right there. That might be a new area to watch out for. There's also another area of notch that would be within Texas, heading towards the Magoon area. That would be within Lipscomb County, Texas. And then we've got with Ellis County, that goes until 8 o'clock. Our Texas side goes until 8:30. So this kind of shows you that the National Weather Service offices were kind of thinking that these storms would eventually cross over in Texas at some point. That's why the Texas side of the tornado warning goes for another 30 more additional minutes than our side does. Not very impressive looking to our notches, but I think those would be the areas to watch out for. But thankfully, I think our storm is definitely on a downward trend. Taking a look not only at our velocity shows that it's not as impressive looking as it was before. You know, there's still areas that you can see highlighted that match up nicely with where that area of rotation is. But when we turn on our product to see what the main threats are, that's not really showing up anymore. It's mainly just now the hail, which is now also down in size too. We're no longer seeing those 2, 3+ inch numbers like we saw earlier on. This one also might be on a downward trend in terms of its hail core too. But moving through the Catesby area, could be looking at easily up to ping pong, maybe golf ball size, but I think it's on a downward trend, and my product is going to be kind of a little bit off because it's an estimation. But we're probably still looking at still larger than quarter size, but probably not the destructive hail that we were talking about earlier where it was up to baseball size earlier on. That's definitely no longer happening with that storm heading by the Catesby area currently. Again, slow moving storms. Everything's moving south at around 15-ish miles an hour. But it's definitely smaller in an overall coverage area. Some other good news, this storm that we have within Kansas that's now crossing back over into Harper County, that storm has now weakened below severe limits, so that's good news there. So this storm was also another one that had the destructive tag as it was working its way through the Ashland, Kansas area, and now it no longer has any type of warning whatsoever. So that one's down. It would make sense though because it's moving through an atmosphere that's been really worked over with our supercell that's just ahead of it by a number of miles. So this one does not have basically the juice to work with anymore, and as a result of that has come down in intensity. Another thing too that we're watching too in terms of coming down in intensity is our Woods County storm. Now, it's going to default to the destructive tag on it, but if you can actually tell, there's actually another regular severe thunderstorm warning overlaid on top of it that I'm drawing right now, and that is because it's on a downward trend. We've been talking about how the hail core isn't as big on that one anymore. Yeah, so that one's come down in intensity a little bit. The Garfield County storm, that's the one that's moving through Enid currently. That one's going to be allowed to expire, so we'll go to that one. Yeah, that one is not really showing much of a threat to really anything now at this point. Taking a look at our reflectivity, yeah, it's really not much there. And in terms of lightning, yeah, there's barely any lightning. So this storm is really weakening quickly as it moves through Enid and the Wacomas area. There's still obviously some rain shower and storm activity extending out from there all the way through Douglas and almost to Marshall. But this storm is now definitely on its downward trend. It got 4 more minutes left of this warning. There's not going to be another warning issued for this storm, which is good news. In terms of farther off more to our south, again, the metro area, not saying we can't see these storms, but as you can see, as everything kind of animates through, once these storms move out of the good area up here, they begin to weaken and they just can't hold on to their intensity any longer. So these rain showers are also weakening too as they make their way towards Calumet. Anymore either. That one is weakening out significantly too. And even if I turn on Twin Lakes radar, so here out of Oklahoma City, you can see that again, everything is coming down. So as these rain showers are coming closer to the actual radar in Watauga, those are fading away. Our Enid storm also fading away too a little bit. So there's a chance that these storms probably won't rain themselves out completely, but there's a chance they might be gone by the time they make their way towards Edmond, let's say, for example. Maybe Guthrie still is able to get some rain showers, but there's a chance, for example, that, maybe downtown still ends up staying dry as everything just dies off really quickly as it makes its way farther from the main development zone in the northwest part of the state, closer to where our boundary is. So we'll clear those out. We'll go back to Vance, and we'll go back up to the northern part of the state. All right, so we still do have another 2 more minutes left of our tornado warned storm. Still watching that notch there south of Catesby by the Tuzalin area, right there. And National Weather Service says that they're going to let the tornado warning expire at the top of the hour. So we will, at that point, more than likely be able to go back to programming. But as you can see, not very impressive looking from your reflectivity, from your velocity. There's still definitely something there, but it's definitely broadened out a lot more compared to earlier on. And I think that and definitely, as we've been talking about, our hail core is also coming down in intensity too. But it's still kind of right there hugging the line between us and Texas. And so we'll see. We'll just give it a few more minutes to make its way into 8 o'clock to see if we get another one that pops back up again, because that has happened many times where we think it's going to cancel and then we get another one that comes back and they're going to come back on again, and that's annoying. But I do think that overall, though, our storm is on a downward trend. There's still a little area, though, of rotation that we continue to watch out for. But it's definitely broadening out quite a bit. And I think it's also telling, too, that we have not seen any confirmed tornado reports in a while now at this point. That storm has been tornado warned now for a long time. We know there's a lot of chasers on that, but it's still remained radar indicated for most of its life. So our current time is 8 o'clock. Let's see what happens here. Let me clear off some of our drawings that we have out there and turn it back to our reflectivity, just to kind of show you where things stand. So we continue to watch that storm within Woods County. That's got some large hail with it. And as you can see now, we no longer have that tornado warning for Ellis County. So that's now gone at this point. Just give it a few more minutes here. We'll see if we get a new one. Let's wait for the National Weather Service to see if they want to issue another one. But it looks to be that has really, the area of rotation has also really kind of broadened out too. As you can kind of see with our reflectivity, there's just not even really much of a notch anymore at this point. It's still kind of right there, but it's really a lot weaker in intensity, which is good news. I think it's safe to say that we can go back to regular programming right now, as this tornado warning probably is not going to be able to cross back over into Oklahoma, but if it does, we'll bring you the latest updates on that. Stay safe this evening, but again, as we go later on this evening, as these storms make their way farther out of northwest Oklahoma, they'll be on a weakening trend, and we'll have much more on these storms during our newscast tonight at 9 o'clock. Hope to join us then.